Yo, what is poppin', my 420 army? It is your boy, my Liam 420, and yep, this is the Mystery Bear film, or it's my review of Brave, the Pixar movie. Yes, this was the bear film that I was having to guess. Or well, actually, at the time I'm recording this, we don't obviously don't know the answer to if someone has correctly guessed it or if they haven't. So, yeah, either way, once the time you see this, it's actually January 7th at the time I'm recording this, and you're obviously not seeing this video being uploaded until February 24th to coincide with the 2-year release of Cocaine Bear. So, I figured why not throw a curveball, review another film that stars bears, and the best film I could think of was this. And you're thinking, why did you choose this movie out of any film that has bears in it? Because I haven't really seen too many. It's because, and with all the guesses I got, like there were a bunch of bear films that are like, oh wow, I've never seen this. Maybe Brother Bear, but I only saw that like once when I was little. So, yep. Either way, and also another reason why I chose Brave is because this is actually a Pixar. This is a Pixar film. However, it actually tends to be overhated by the Pixar community for some reason, which I don't know why. Even though this film this particular movie used to scare me when I was a kid, and you're thinking, wait, Liam 420, the guy who loves horror, was scared of this movie when it first came out. Well, I was only 10 years old at the time, and this movie came out in 2012, so yeah, that's why. It wasn't until like the original Five Nights at Freddy's came out when I kind of started shifting into my horror phase. Well, I was kind of into horror a little bit, and I did rewatch this movie after I got into FNAF, and actually was surprised that it didn't scare me as much then. But obviously, this movie is tame compared to all the horror stuff I watch nowadays, like Outlast, Alien Isolation, and pretty much every single other horror film that just has a lot of blood and guts in it. But either way, we'll basically explain like why is this movie so overhated, and why is it tend to be forgotten? Is it because, and also, it is worth mentioning that this film was released right. This was Pixar's first film right after Cars 2, and yeah, I'll explain that a little later once we are actually getting into the meat and potatoes of this film. So basically, it starts with a little girl, Merida, who was originally supposed to be voiced by Reese Witherspoon, but is instead voiced by Scottish actress Kelly MacDonald after Reese left the project because she couldn't get her Scottish accent down. So basically, she's playing some hide and seek with her mother, Queen Eleanor, voiced by Emma Thompson, I think. But they're just kind of playing some hide and seek until Eleanor finds Merida and starts playing, and then King Fergus, voiced by Billy Connolly. Yes, every time. Now, basically, and also because of this movie, every time I hear Billy Connolly's voice, I'm like, oh, okay, yeah, that is the King from Brave. Yeah, that voice has just been forever engraved into my head as King Fergus from this. Because basically, either way, basically Fergus puts his bow on the table and he's eating, and Eleanor tells him, dude, no weapons on the table, because, yeah, apparently, I'm not sure if that was a common rule back in Scottish days where you weren't supposed to have your weapons on the table. But it's a bow because obviously they didn't have guns back in the medieval days. And Merida's like, can I please shoot an arrow? And Fergus is like, not with that, but you can use your very own. Happy birthday. And then, because it was technically Merida's birthday, or belated. I'm not sure if it was actually the day of her birthday, if it was like the day before. They never clarified that, but basically they're doing some bow and arrow practice with Merida, and her arrows are just shooting all over the place. She doesn't even hit the target once. And then after she shoots an arrow that goes into the woods, they send her into the forest to retrieve it, and then once Merida gets the arrow, she follows a trail of these like little blue entities called Will-o'-the-Wisps, and they lead her back to the campsite. And she even tells her mother that she saw the wisps, and Eleanor's like, ooh, the wisps lead you to your fate. And Fergus is like, yeah, for an arrow, but come on, let's just get out of here. And then that's when the demon bear Mordu shows up, and Yeah, that bastard scared me as a kid. Yes, this is kind of the reason why this movie scared me when I was little, because Mordu was just scary as fuck. So then, Eleanor and Merida run off while Fergus stays behind to fight Mordu along with his men, and he doesn't, and they end up just don't do shit to him, apparently. Like, there's a scene where Fergus gets, like, a spear tripe off, and then right before the title card is showed, it shows Mordu lunging towards Fergus, and apparently it results in Fergus getting his leg bitten off. And that's when we see the title card. And then we kind of just see, like, images of, which is like, geez, that's a pretty intense opening. And now that I actually think of it, now that I'm reviewing this movie, I'm kind of wondering how little kid me would have handled Cocaine Bear if this movie scared little kid me as a kid. Would Cocaine Bear have scared little kid me? That's actually one thing I'm wondering. But anyways, they're basically Meredith's just kind of talking over some like screens, some scenes, and then even Fergus fighting some enemies. It's like, and basically my father lost his legs to Demon Bear Mordu. It became a legend, and also Merida is now the older sister of 3 triplet boys named Hamish, Hubert, and Harris. I think the one's name was Hamish, but for sure Hubert and for sure Harris. And they just get up to no good. Like, they steal donuts and stuff, and then there's like, then we even see like a montage of Merida doing her typical duties as a princess, like, and basically how Eleanor like basically commands her to be a princess. It's like, you gotta enunciate your words. It's like, motherfucker. It's like, they're just talking. It's like, she's only to say it once, goddammit. So then there's just like more scenes, like trying to teach Merida how to play a harp and other tons of stuff, like make sure she's trying to clean. And then Merida in the narration track says that there is a day every now and then where she doesn't have to be a princess and she can just do whatever she wants. And we literally see like her riding her horse Angus out of the castle and just kind of like using her bow and arrow, just kind of having some fun, shooting arrows in trees and stuff. And then there's also a scene where she's near like a waterfall and then she actually ends up like drinking from it. No, she doesn't do like that. She doesn't stick her entire head under the water. She just puts her hands in like a cup and drinks like this. Because often when I drink from a faucet, I usually just stick my whole head under the thing, like. So then when Merida gets back to the castle, she grabs some food and heads in the kitchen where Fergus is telling the boys about his encounter with Mordu and how he lost his leg. But also, they never clarify which of the boys is which, because they literally all look the same. But like, one of the boys is mimicking Fergus until Merida interrupts the story. And Fergus is like, hey, that's my favorite part. And then Merida goes to sit down while also placing her bow, and then Eleanor reminds her about violating their rule of no weapons on the table, and Merida's like, it's just my bow. And Eleanor even said that, like, technically princesses should not have weapons in your opinion. And I have to agree with Fergus on this part, because he actually says, princess or not, learning to fight is essential. Yes! That is a good thing to be teaching your kids. That's what I'm teaching if I ever have kids, I'm straight up telling them that, if they ever get in, like, a dangerous scenario. And then Merida's basically telling Fergus about her day. Oh, hey, I climbed that Clane's tooth and drank from the firefalls. And Fergus is like, wow, they say only the ancient kings were brave enough to drink of fire. But then they're just kind of having their dinner until the maid, Maudie, comes in with some letters from the lords, Macintosh, MacGuffin, and Dingwall. And it's like, oh, damn, they've accepted the thought. And then also Merida distracts the boys with some cakes or whatever those things are. While the dogs... Then also Fergus has 2 dogs that just come running and start, like, attacking him. And he even's like, no, don't chew my food. Here, you can chew on my false leg. That is so funny. And also, unbeknownst to him, the boys tie his laces to the table before Eleanor tells them, your excuse, and then they leave. But the dogs end up chasing after them. It's like, also the lords accepted the fall. It's like, And this is where Merida kind of starts getting upset. It's because obviously she has to, like, apparently has to choose someone to get married, but she doesn't want to get married. And some people are thinking, wait, isn't that a cliche? That's just a parody of Jasmine. It's like, no, this is actually Pixar attempting a unique style. Or, true, it is kind of reused from Jasmine, but of course, Merida does not want to get married, and she storms off after having a confrontation. So then Fergus is about to go talk to Merida, but obviously he ends up tipping the whole table over. He's like, God damn it! So then Eleanor goes to talk to Merida in her room, who's just like trashing it, slashing her bed frame with her sword, and then she's like about like this ancient kingdom that was ruled by a wise king, and then once the king grew old, he decided that he would split his kingdom amongst all four of his sons as opposed to just passing the role onto his oldest. But apparently the oldest did not like that idea and ended up going down a path of his own, which resulted in the whole kingdom breaking out into a war. And yep, this is basically like, they're even doing a great job at like how to verify, like, ooh, if Mira doesn't get married, this will happen. It's going to end up, the kingdom's going to fall into chaos and ruin. And of course, Merida still doesn't buy it. And then we cut to Eleanor working on the family tapestry, which, oh yeah, by the way, here's where the reference from Cars 2 was. See, in Cars 2, there's a scene where Grim and Acer get flung into a bar, and then you can actually see like a carified version of the tapestry. I'll throw a screenshot of it up so you can see. Oh, so that's where, yeah, Pixar does that quite a lot, where they tease something that's going to show up in their next film. And when Pixar does a film, they kind of give a hint as to what their next one's going to be, and this was it. So basically, when Fergus and Eleanor are talking, it's like, speak to her. It's like, I do speak to her, but she doesn't listen. And then Fergus decides, here, pretend I'm Merida and speak to me, which eventually Eleanor gives in and then starts talking. But thing is, then they also start, like, cutting out to the barn where Merida is cleaning up, and it's like, is Merida just Fergus talking, or are these two scenes actually happening at the exact same time? But yeah, then after that's over, we cut to, like, early the next morning when the Lords, Macintosh, MacGuffin, and Dingwall are arriving, and I just know that I think MacGuffin is voiced by Kevin McKidd. Yeah, and Craig Ferguson is Macintosh, and then Robbie Coltrane is Dingwall. I have the Wikipedia for this movie pulled up, so that's how I was just reading the names from there. So basically, as they're arriving, then we see Eleanor trying to get Merida all dressed up, and there's actually a little bit of an inconsistency here because Merida is actually wearing a corset, but apparently corsets were not used until the 17th century, so that is just a small inconsistency that was probably overlooked. That was just noticed on the mistakes found in Pixar Film's article I found online. And then, of course, Eleanor's like trying to get Merida to smile, but then we see some shenanigans with the boys cutting somebody's mustache off and then trying to get everyone in their places. And also, one of the guards is actually voiced by John Ratzenberger. Yes, because this movie was made back when John Ratzenberger would have a cameo in like at least every Pixar film, like starting with Ham in the Toy Story movies, P.T. Flea in A Bug's Life, the Yeti from Monsters Inc. I know he was in Finding Nemo, but I can't remember. I think he was like that swarm of fish from Finding Nemo. Then he was the Underminer from The Incredibles. He was Mac in the Cars films. He was the one waiter in Ratatouille. Then he was John in Wall-E. I forget who he played in Up. But he had to have been in Up, though I forget exactly who his character was. Actually, no, in Up he was one of the construction workers. But then I think he was also like Fritz and Inside Out, and yeah. Basically, once the Lords arrive, they're all ready, and then they begin presenting themselves. Macintosh goes first, represents his son, tells his story, and Macintosh is like, what's so weird? He's tall and skinny, but he's like super thin. And then MacGuffin, he's like Chris Walker size, similar, kind of like King Fergus. He's Chris Walker size, and he has his son who is also Chris Walker size, and apparently Kevin McKidd just used like this heavy Scottish accent that's like impossible to understand. All you hear is like fuck, shit, fuck. Yeah, that's literally a joke I have in like one of my books I'm writing if someone a Scottish accent where they just drop like 10 F-bombs and yeah. But then when Dingwall has his turn, and yes, Dingwall is a goddamn elf because he had to use a step stool just to be even with Macintosh and MacGuffin. Dingwall presents his son, which is like some big buff dude, but then he uses his other actually character, Wee Dingwall, before someone calls him a liar. It's like, hey, I heard that. Say it to my face. And then they're still kind of like arguing. And then like what's so funny, it just leads to like a massive brawl breaking out. It's like the Lord tell him what. It's like the Lords are like, no, I want Merida to marry my kid, or like, no, I want her mine. I want mine. Then it just gets to chaos, and then first time Fergus gets up and he yells, "Shut it!" which quiets it down. But then the fight starts up again after Dingwall gets stabbed in the foot by the three boys, and this time Fergus actually jumps in. And then it's so funny until Eleanor decides, fuck this, I'm getting my husband out of there, which she does. Before she says, okay, the firstborn of each descendant of each of the clans will have to prove their work in the games. And Merida thinks, ooh, firstborn, so that means I get to go. And obviously the princess would have to choose her own game, so of course Merida chooses archery. And you know where this is going, right? So once the games begin, we cut to everybody outside. They're playing all tons of games. I'm not sure. I don't recognize any of the games other than Tug of War with like that big muscular dude who just yanks them in like one swift motion because of how buff he is. But yeah, after some more shenanigans with the boys stealing some cakes from Maudie and even her trying to chase them, the games officially start. And now, with the actual archery practice here, this doesn't affect the film, but it's just a little confusing as to how many points each person got, because... So basically, MacGuffin's son goes first, and his is only on, like, he only gets, like, 1 point or 2 points. He's like, God damn it, yeah, you can kiss that princess goodbye. But then when Macintosh's son has his turn, he gets like 8 or 9 points, and then he just gets busy. He's like, God damn it, I didn't get a bullseye! It's like, okay, I don't really get what the joke is, but then when Wee Dingwall goes, he accidentally spills some arrows, and there's like a scene with him like finicky, like trying to get his bow. Merida even like comments on it. It's like, wow. I don't know. And then, of course, Wee Dingwall's trying to get his bow. It just keeps going out to the side till Fergus is like, just shoot already! Which he does, and he gets a bullseye. And Dingwall is just gloating. He's like, yeah, feast your eyes on my ginormous ass. It's like, and even Fergus is impressed, like, okay. Oh, hey, Merida, hope you don't mind being called Lady Dingwall. Where the hell did she go? Because Merida is just gone. And one of Fergus's dogs is there. And then Merida steps in and decides that she's going to shoot for her own hand, which she's trying to shoot. It's like, curse this goddamn dress! And she splits it before getting bullseyes on 3 of the targets. And Eleanor is like, Merida, you stop this right now. And also when she gets to the third and final target, since that target already had a bullseye, the arrow just like slices right through and it gets stuck, which, because again, I don't know how the point system works. I'll throw in like a Wii Sports Resort archery target so you can kind of see how normal archery works. Like it'd be 1 point, then 2 points, then 3 points, then 4, then 5, then 6, then 7, then 8, then 9, and then obviously the gold part in the middle is 10. And there's also like a brief moment where Merida and Eleanor are just like staring at each other like this, Until the very next scene, we cut to Eleanor throwing Merida into the tapestry room, and they're just constantly arguing with each other. And it's like, just Merida tries to get Eleanor to listen, but then Eleanor says, I am the queen, so you listen to me. And of course, Merida is just like, well, this is unfair. You never let me do whatever the hell I want. This marriage is what you want. And there's just more arguing. And then the argument peaks as high as it can when Merida walks over the tapestry with her sword drawn and literally ends up cutting it because she does not want to be like her mother, and this results in Eleanor grabbing Merida's bow and throwing it into the fireplace. And obviously Merida runs off distraught, and Eleanor's like, Merida, before she realizes the bow in the fireplace, she's like, no, why did I throw my daughter's bow in the fireplace? Because actually she immediately regrets doing that before we see Merida crying out and Angus running away from the castle until they get into the woods, and then unfortunately Angus gets like blindsided by some trees and he accidentally catapults Merida into the middle of a ring of giant stones. And guess what? The wisps from before are back. And then Merida follows them to a cottage which is owned by a witch, voiced by Julie Walters. And also, here's the funny part. Julie Walters was actually Molly Weasley in the Harry Potter films, so you'll probably realize how much sillier this is when you realize that Julie Walters, like, played a witch for 8 films that came out, like, past 10 years, and then she's stuck playing a witch in this film. And the witch is trying to, like, disguise herself as a wood carver so that she's not actually, people don't think she's actually a witch, but she clearly does a piss poor job at doing that, like letting her broom sweep by itself, and then her talking crow starts yapping, and then that's when it blows her cover that she's a witch, and the witch is trying to say, no, I am not a witch, I've just had too many unsatisfied customers all these years. And you better get the fuck out of here if you're not going to buy anything. But then Merida's like, no, wait, I'll buy every single carving. And I'll pay for it with this necklace, which is obviously like the emblem of her kingdom. So then, also, by the way, on the wood carvings before we continue, Pixar did another foreshadowing to the next film, because the next film after Brave was Monsters University, and you can actually see Sully from Monsters, Inc. carved on a piece of wood at one point, so I just want to bring that up before we continue. So it's like, that is clever that Pixar does that, where they try to foreshadow, where they try to give a hint of what their next film is going to be. But anyways, the witch then changes her cottage into a cauldron. All she does is she just steps outside and changes the cottage from like a wood shop into a brewing cauldron. And then she says, never conjure where you carve. It's very important. And by the way, what she says next here is important to the story. So she says last time she did the spell was for a prince. She gets, and that said prince demanded to have the strength of 10 men and gave her like a ring with 2 axes on it for a spell that would change his fate. And Merida asks, did he get what he was after? And the witch tells her, yes, he did. So then they start throwing stuff in there, like a stick, I think was supposed to be like a representation of a Pixar film that ended up getting canceled. Which I'm not sure, I forget what that film was called, I'll have to look it up, but basically, I'm not sure, even if they did go on with that canceled film, would it still end up getting a Rod Torque Redline death sequence in it? Because, okay, basically, okay, I'll just explain this right now because it's going to come into handy much later, but basically, I invented a term known as the Curse of the Rod Torque Redline death sequence, which basically, obviously, Cars 2, the film that came out before this, is where the whole gag was born, because obviously Rod Torque Redline in Cars 2, he was tortured and killed by the Lemons in a very dark death scene that just completely went over my head as a kid. I never noticed this until like years later. And you're probably thinking, oh, so Pixar did something so horrendous that probably was not appropriate for their film, so hopefully they didn't try to do it again. Well, you're wrong. They thought it would be appropriate for the next 8,000 films that they made after this. But luckily, this movie, I'm going to say it right now, this movie, Brave, actually managed to escape this curse. And so did Monsters University, so thought I was bringing that up. But anyways, the potion has like a stick, Merida's hair, and there's like a third ingredient I kind of forgot. Yes, I literally just watched the movie a few hours ago before recording this, but basically they get the potion ready, and then once it's done, the witch and the crow are wearing stuff, and the witch even covers up Merida's eyes to prevent her from going blind. And then once the potion is done, the witch pulls out a cake, and decides, alrighty, all you have to do is give this cake to your mother, and it will change your fate. So then Merida leaves the cottage, and the witch is like, God damn it, what was that thing about the spell? And Merida's like, did you say something? But then she just magically teleported back to the stone ring before it cuts to the castle where Fergus is just entertaining all the lords, and he's like trying to say, alrighty, Mordu, you bit off my leg, and I am going to get back at you for that. So either ways, Merida is basically just getting a tray dish ready to give to her mother, and then obviously Eleanor walks in and is like, Merida, where were you? I was worried sick, and what happened to your dress? It's like, oh yeah, Angus threw me, but I'm not hurt. And oh yeah, I've pacified the lords for now, and your father's up there entertaining them. But we still know a decision needs to be made, and Merida's like, of course. And she grabs the cake that the witch made and gives it to Eleanor, and it's like, I made this peace offering for you. Eleanor's like, okay, might as well try some of it. So that's what she does. She has a small piece of the cake, and she starts feeling off, like, ew, what's in here? It's like, but then she decides, let's go upstairs to the lords, and Merida's even asking, so what are you thinking about the marriage? But then when Eleanor starts feeling woozy again, she's like, fuck the marriage, just take me to my room already. I need to get some rest. So that's what she does, even though she does briefly talk to the lords, and Fergus is like, hey Eleanor, look, it's Mordu, you want to come join us? And Eleanor's like, no, I'm fine, I just need some rest. You go back and continue your legend, which Fergus does. And then once we're in their bedroom, Merida tucks her mother in, and it's like, alright, you can just go ahead, get some rest, and then maybe you'll have something new to say about the marriage. But then Eleanor falls out of the bed, and Merida's like, Mom, are you okay? But then she walks over to where her mother fell, and that's when she notices the mass of the covers is getting big, and Merida's like, what the fuck is going on? And then that's when it's revealed that the cake turned Eleanor into a bear. And Merida realizes, holy shit, you've turned into a fucking bear. And this results, and of course, Eleanor eventually finds this out, but then she ends up trashing the room in the process, and Merida's like, that goddamn witch. I did not ask her to change her into a bear. I only asked her to change you. And then Eleanor's like, what? And then she ends up roaring so loud that apparently even Fergus hears it, and then Fergus hears the roar, and then he's like, something's not right. He's now starting to suspect that Mordu is in the castle somewhere, which obviously that's not true. So then Merida's like, okay, everything to go at me about having turned you into a fucking bear. We gotta blame the witch and find her and figure out how to reverse this. So that's what they do. They try to sneak out of the castle, but unfortunately it's like, damn it, we can't go this way because Fergus is there, and he's already suspecting that his arch nemesis is in the castle. So Merida's just like trying to stop Eleanor from going. It's like, okay, now we have to make sure nobody sees us. But unfortunately, Maudie sees them and is terrified, and then she runs away screaming before Fergus finds her. It's like, what is it? He's like, there's a bear! And then Fergus is like, I knew Mordu was in the castle! And then, like, oh god, we gotta go fast. But then, obviously, Eleanor wanders off, finds the boys, and then they're even shocked with it when Merida eventually comes into the room. The boys are like, how do you... the boys don't actually have dialogue, but they're just kind of gesturing. How do you explain this? And then Merida tells them, okay, a witch turned Mom into a bear. Just distract Dad and keep him away from Mom until we get out of here. So that's what they do. They use a toad into thinking that it's a bear. So, well, two of them at least. Well, the third. Again, they don't clarify which of the three boys is which because they literally look identical. Because even most twins have a way that you can tell them apart, but not here. So then basically once Merida and Eleanor manage to get out, like they basically troll Fergus and the Lords and end up getting chased onto the roof terrace and... yeah, that there's like, unless it just sprouted wings and flew away. So then they decided to get inside, but they realized they're locked out, and Dingwall apparently propped it with a stick since he was the last one out. So then they head down to the kitchen, and apparently they end up scaring Maudie again with the old Mr. Bean turkey head trick before Merida and Eleanor leave the castle, and then the boys end up spotting the spell cake, and they end up finishing the cake, spoiler warning. So then we see Fergus and the Lords coming down, and they decide, great, now we gotta figure out how we get our clothes. And yes, it actually, the animators actually put all their butts in here. It's like, so we're looking at people's asses. It's like, yeah, it's just a small detail. It's like, at least they didn't try to animate the penises due to the affirmation, because this would probably get at the Rod Torque Red Line death sequence curse if they did animate the penises, but obviously they did not. So that's why this film is totally free from it. So then Merida and Eleanor are back at the stone circle, and they're like, where are the goddamn wisps? Before Eleanor decides to wander into the woods and try to find the witch's cottage through blind luck, which they actually do manage to find the witch's cottage even without the wisps guiding them, because Merida eventually realizes her way, but then obviously no one's in there, and she tries snapping like the witch did, but it's not working, because either Merida was doing it wrong, or it's only supposed to work when the witch does it. But then Merida eventually realizes that the witch actually sent like an automated message in case somebody came by while she was gone. And also, she even had a vial prepped in case Merida did come back. So that's exactly what happened. They see the witch and the witch's head in the cauldron. Welcome to the crafty carver of all these bear carvings. And then vial 3 if you're that red-haired chick who came by. So Merida pours it into the cauldron and gets that information about the spell. And apparently she has a riddle that goes along the lines of fate be changed. Look inside. Mend the bond torn by pride. And Merida's like, what the fuck is that supposed to mean? But then when the witch disappears, Merida's like, no, 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 no. Give me a way to reverse the curse. And then she just keeps dumping all the potions in until the cottage eventually blows up. And then it's pouring rain, so Merida and Eleanor decide to just crash there for the night. And we even see a flashback of Merida when she was young, when she got scared of a thunderstorm. Before we cut to the following morning, where Eleanor's already prepped some breakfast, and then Merida joins, but then she places her bowl on the table. And yes, even as a fucking bear, Eleanor is keen on that rule of not having weapons on the table, and makes Merida remove her bow, and she's like, okay, fine. But then Eleanor just completely flips the table away after eating some berries that she picked, not knowing that they were actually poisonous, and then drinking some water that had worms in it. So then they head to the lake and start catching some fish, but then as Eleanor is eating the fish, she starts to eat it the way a normal bear would, and then there's just like a montage of them where she wants more fish, and Merida's like, no, if you want more fish, you go to the lake yourself and get it. So that's what they do, is like a montage of them trying to catch fish until Eleanor wanders off into the woods. And also, Eleanor took her crown off and just left it on a rock, and the camera, I think the reason why the camera focuses on the crown for quite a bit is just to mention that, just to show that, hey, she left the crown behind, and obviously the further fate of the crown is unknown. But then when they wander into the woods, Merida's trying to get her mom's attention, and then Eleanor's going feral as if she's actually, her human personality is being completely transformed into a bear. And then Merida's like, what? Holy shit, you acted like you were a bear on the inside. But then Eleanor starts chasing after a wisp before Merida's like, geez, relax, we gotta figure out where these wisps are going to take us. So they follow the trail of wisps, to the remains of like a building, and also the emblem on the stone arch is the same emblem that was on the signet ring that the witch showed Merida earlier. So you know where this is going, right? This is starting to realize why Merida should be careful of her actions. But then they're exploring the debris, and then Merida falls in to like a throne room after stepping on like a weak floorboard, and then realizes, ooh, this must be the throne room in that story you were telling me, or the kingdom in it, the one with the princes. But then and this is even confirmed later when she sees a stone slab that has the four sons on it, although the oldest was cut off, similar to how kind of similar to how Merida cut the tapestry earlier. The prince used an axe to cut himself off the stone slab, and Merida realizes, oh no, the spells happened before. The oldest prince wanted to ask for the strength of 10 men to change his fate. And that prince, and basically the prince ended up becoming Mordu. And then, whoa, the bastard was right behind Merida this whole time. So then Merida is like shooting her bow and arrow at her. And also, by the way, the movie never mentions where Merida got a new bow from after Eleanor burned her other one. So luckily, Merida manages to escape by climbing back up the debris, just barely making it before Mordu can get her with his claw. But then Merida and Eleanor escape after burying Mordu in some rocks, and they get back to that stone circle or mine her ring, and then Merida's like, we gotta get back to the castle, because if you don't, you're gonna end up just like Mordu. And the witch gave us the answer. We gotta fix the tapestry. So then Merida and Eleanor, which actually, this is actually, yep, that really shows how Merida didn't want to get married, but then she realizes that she has to be careful about her actions, which she learned here. So they head back to the castle, and also the reason why Merida takes Eleanor into the castle despite her being a bear and despite her father hating bears, it's because if Merida just left Eleanor outside, Eleanor would have wandered off into the woods and the curse would have never been broken, and Eleanor would literally become the female equivalent of Mordu, becomes a real bear for the rest of her life, living on for centuries. But it says that Mordu lived on for centuries after he turned to a bear, but doesn't explain how the witch is still alive, like, centuries later, but so then as they're sneaking up, Merida realizes, shit, we gotta get past Dad and the Lords, because who are literally in a full-blown war. It's like, he's like, none of your sons demand to marry my daughter. This is where Merida is kind of starting to realize the consequences of her actions, but then Eleanor's like, how about you go in there and distract them while I sneak my way through? And that's exactly what Merida does. She sneaks in. Well, actually, she steps in and then starts talking with the Lords while Eleanor's sneaking her way through. Even though Merida is kind of playing some charades, like, while Eleanor's trying to, like, convince Merida what to say to them so that she doesn't accidentally fuck up her words. And it's like, and honestly, luckily nobody noticed that because they were all focused on Merida. She even yells, "Shut it!" when everyone's all talking at once, and Fergus is like, "Yay, that's my girl," because obviously Merida wasn't talking to him. Which, yes, this is why this movie is better than Inside Out. Which, okay, by the way, yes, Inside Out did get affected by the Rod Torque Redline death sequence curse, because basically it showed Riley turning into a selfish, bossy bitch after moving to San Francisco, having to fight with her parents, and telling them to shut up for no goddamn reason. So, yeah. That is why Inside Out is one of the worst Pixar films for me. And also, it's just so super sad in general. So, but anyways, back to Brave. After Merida's like talking and decides, yeah, I've been super selfish, so yeah. And then after they all reconcile with each other, Merida sends everyone to the cellar so they can celebrate, and then once everyone's gone, Merida's like, all right, let's get to that tapestry, stitch it up. So once they're in the tapestry room, Merida's like, okay, now we have to stitch this bad boy up, and it'll turn you back into a human. But then Eleanor starts going rogue again. And unfortunately, Fergus just so happens to be walking by at that moment. And this is where Mira's like, shit, I gotta go fast. But obviously she doesn't know that it's actually not the tapestry that needs to be stitched. She just has to accept her mother as she is, which she eventually does at the end of the film. But we'll get to that when we get to that. So either way, Fergus heads into his room, sees it completely trashed from when Eleanor turned into a bear, and first turned into a bear, and then he finds Eleanor's dress on the floor, which, yes, Eleanor actually wore the blanket around her earlier when she first transformed, and then this causes Fergus to go, to freak out, and then he literally starts frantically searching the castle, screaming Eleanor's name until he enters the tapestry room and sees Merida trying to tear the tapestry off the wall. He's like, Merida, what the hell are you doing? Then he notices Eleanor, not thinking that it's Mor'du, but obviously it's not, and literally attacks her. And it's like, no, that is not Mor'du. That is your goddamn wife. But then obviously Eleanor runs away because she accidentally cut Merida. And then that's when the lords see her, and then they chase her outside. And Fergus is like, okay, Merida, where did you bump your head at? And Merida's like, I did not bump my head anywhere, and it's true. There was a witch and she gave me a spell that turned mom into a bear, and it's not Mor'du. And Fergus is like, fuck that. I'm gonna avenge your mother for dying. I'm not gonna lose you too. But then Fergus gives the key to Maudie. And obviously after a few failed attempts of Merida trying to break the door down, she ends up getting sad because her mother was being chased by her husband and the Lord. So then Merida decides, no, I gotta get my mother back. So she tears the tapestry off the wall and tries to figure out a way how to cheese Maudie into giving her the key. And oh yeah, by the way, the boys were just completely absent until now, and that's when it's like, yep, they've been turned into bears. And then Merida tells the boys to get the key, which, okay, by the way, Maudie puts it in her goddamn boobs. She puts the key in her damn boobs and runs off. So basically, she tries to hide in the kitchen, but the boys catch up to her and they steal the key. And okay, you're probably wondering, wait, Liam, how is this not Rod? How does this movie get free of the Rod Torque Redline death sequence curse if they actually show someone reaching into a woman's breasts? Well, first of all, they don't actually show him sticking his paw into her cleavage to grab the key. They only show him jumping off the ledge. It's like, why are people just picking about this? Almost like the aforementioned See from Inside Out with Riley Riley verbally attacking her parents by telling them to shut up and that, and yet no one gives a fuck about that scene. It's like, man, this community is so brain rotted. It's like, you'd rather watch a girl turn into a selfish, bossy bitch over them stealing a key from a woman's cleavage? It's like, what the fuck is wrong with you people? But then, obviously, after they get the key, they free Merida, and then they go chasing after Fergus into the wood, and to catch up with Fergus and the others. And by the way, they chase Eleanor all the way back to the stone circle, and they get her all tied up. But luckily, when Merida arrives, there's even a trail of wisps, and also while she's riding, she stitches the tapestry back up because she thinks it's that needs to cure Merida. I just got a text. I'll check that later. But anyways, once Merida reaches the stone circle, she sees a trail of wisps leading into the woods. Leading into the stone circle, so she follows it, and but obviously the real Mor'du is watching from a distance, and then Fergus gets off his horse ready to kill the fake Mor'du, which is actually his wife, but he doesn't know that before he can strike, that's when Merida shows up and intervenes. But then Merida takes him down, and it's like, I'm not going to let you kill my mother. And then the boys even start start climbing all over Fergus, and he's like, what the heck, boys? So then obviously that's when he realizes that is the fake that was probably my wife this whole time. And obviously that's when the real Mor'du shows up, and then Fergus and the Lords try to attack him, but he just absolutely destroys them. Like, no, they survive. He just kind of easily flings them out of his way. Merida shoots at Mor'du, but then Mor'du pins Merida to the ground and is about to kill her. But luckily, Eleanor manages to break free right before Mor'du can kill Merida. And then, yes, this movie gives us a bear versus bear fight climax. And like Cocaine Bear was like humans versus humans, but then the bear leader comes in. So yeah, so Mordu and Eleanor are fighting until Mordu throws Eleanor into like one of the stones that starts cracking. It also cracked earlier when Eleanor crashed into it after he escaped from Mordu the first time, but then Eleanor is quickly able to grab Mordu when he starts targeting Merida again, and cheeses him into crashing into the boulder again, and then just starts repeatedly slamming him against it before being punched away, and then Mordu's about to attack them, but obviously before he can, the stone falls over and crushes Mordu, ultimately killing him. And it's like, yeah, that would be pretty dark for a kid's movie. And obviously that's when the prince's spirit emerges from the rock, and he turns into a wisp after kind of just... The spirit doesn't actually say anything, but he just is kind of thanking Merida for freeing him from his bear prison, and then he turns into a wisp, and then the sun starts coming up, and Merida grabs a tapestry, throws it on Eleanor, and it's like, now to turn you back into a human. But nothing happened. Merida's like, no, I didn't want to turn you into a bear permanently. I want you to be turned into a human again. And Merida's just like crying until the sunlight goes over Eleanor. Also, when I first watched this, I used to think it was the sunlight that caused Eleanor to turn back into a human, but the Wikipedia of this movie says that it was actually Merida begging for her mother to turn back into a human that lifted the curse. And then Merida's sad until Eleanor starts stroking Merida's hair, and Merida's like, oh my god, you're back! It's like, and obviously Fergus runs over to hug his wife, and Merida's kind of just like, ugh. And also, Eleanor's naked, and she's like, Fergus, I'm naked. Tell these guys to look away. And Pervert's like, will you pervert show some respect here? And guess what? The boys are also naked too. And you see their butts. And then literally the next scene, Eleanor and Merida are kind of bonding with each other, just like they did when Merida was little, and even made a new tapestry with a bear and a sword on and Merida on it. So then they say goodbye to the lords who are leaving, but then unfortunately Fergus realizes that the boys ended up stowing away in one of the lord's ships. He's like, I gotta go get them! So that's what he does. He's chasing after them in a rowboat, and then we see Merida and Eleanor just riding on their horses together. Some mother-daughter time. It's like, oh, that's a nice way to end the film. And that's basically it. Though we do get a post-credit scene I never knew this film had. And where, like, all the wood carving stuff that Merida bought beforehand arrives at the palace, and then basically, that's basically it after this film. And also, the DVD comes with a bonus short called The Legend of Mordu that explains how, like, Mordu became the way he was. With, like, the kingdom going to war, and, like, Mordu wanting to be the sole heir of his kingdom before he went to the witch and turned himself into a bear and stayed like that forever, because Mordu killed his brothers after he turned into a bear and became that demon bear he was. So, and, yeah, that is actually why I really like this film. It's like Pixar's first attempt at a female protagonist, and it seemed like they did a decent job, even though they kind of recycled from Jasmine and a few other Disney princesses, but yeah, I'll basically put a list in the description of... By the way, if you're wondering what every other Pixar film that got affected by the Rod Torque Red Line death sequence curse was, I'll put a full list in the description and hopefully try to, like, rewatch some of the films from the 2010s, like rewatch Good Dinosaur and all that by the time this video was public, so you can see if that film had... I know Good Dinosaur has one, but I can't remember what it was. Cars 3 was Lightning McQueen's Crash, and Toy Story 4, I think... Toy Story 4 is fine. I gotta see if Incredibles 2 had one, which I don't think it did, but Finding Dory also managed to escape from it, so I think it was just kind of those few films from the 2010s that were affected by this curse. Luckily, some of the films from the 2020s seem to be fine. Soul and Onward were fine. Luca was fine. Turning Red was fine. I'll have to watch Elemental to see, and hopefully it was freed from this curse. And even Inside Out 2 was miles better than the original Inside Out, because they didn't rely on a raw torque red line death sequence curse, even though the anxiety attack in the film almost I was tempted to put that on there, but it's like, no, they were just trying to get their point across. It's just kind of like, even though Pixar had dark moments in their older films before Cars 2 came out, it's just that whole Rud Torque Redline death sequence moment has just completely fried my brain into thinking that's like, oh, this dark moment was appropriate, or oh, this dark moment is inappropriate for the film. But yeah, either way, let me know in the comments. Have you seen Brave? Did you like it? Or are you just one of the many people who hate this film? Or hopefully, even if you used to hate this film, I eventually ended up changing your mind on it and saying, ooh, this is actually a really good film. But yep, that's basically it. And it basically it really tries to get its point across of like, hey, sometimes selfish acts can lead to like bad things happening. You gotta like mend that up. Or even for like a medieval type film, but yeah, that is why this is why I consider Brave to be an underrated gem. But yeah, that's basically it for this review, and obviously I'll post the results of this guessing game challenge in a pinned comment as to figure out whether you did guess on time or whether you did not, and then if it yeah, that's basically it. So please like, comment, share, sub, and peace.